Hello, you're listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Sunday, May the 3rd, and here's a couple of comments since my last video. On this day in 1916, Pádraig Pearse is executed in Kilmainham jail. And on this day in 1921, the Government of Ireland Act is passed, dividing Ireland into Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, with the remaining provisions of this act still in force in Northern Ireland until they were repealed under the terms of the 1998 Good Friday Agreement. And on this day in 1945, the Karp, Arconia, Telbeck and Deutschland ocean liners were attacked by the RAF in the Baltic Sea, resulting in 7,000 concentration camp survivors being killed. And in 1469, the birth of Niccolò Bernardo Machiavelli, often described as the father of modern political science, after writing The Prince in 1513, and as someone once described politics as being acting for ugly people, and it's been downhill ever since. As we enter week 6 of Cleo's lockdown, I suppose a suitable quote from Machiavelli would be a good start. The first method of estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Coveney, Donoghue and Harris spring to mind. With the 5th of May deadline fast approaching, the carrot and stick approach still continues, with it now being extended yet again until May the 18th, with a suggestion that some restrictions will be lifted, but only if we are very good and compliant citizens. And yet an examination of figures in Ireland has 241 deaths per million, compared with Portugal at 97, Denmark 78, Austria at 65, Slovenia 44, Norway 38, Hungary at 32, and as of 30th of April, 630 COVID-related deaths in nursing homes, with the government advising them not to send their patients to hospital and manage their own cases as a result. The average age of those who died is 81 years old, and 83% of nursing home residents who died passed away in their nursing homes, with, as of this morning, 1,265 passed away. Even Vincent Brown put out a tweet: "How is our death rate per million so high?" And in a table of small countries of between 1 and 10 million, Ireland comes out the worst in infections and death rates. One of those prepared to speak out has been Dr. Marcus de Bruin, whose Twitter page introduction says, "Shut down RTE, reform the medical and legal professions, reinvent the education system, and rethink democracy, amongst others," and says that a lockdown is being used primarily to protect politicians and policymakers from the truth. It is causing more harm than good, and has compared nursing homes to the workhouses of the famine era, and has written a letter to the editors of the Times and Sunday Business Post accusing the government of state-sponsored euthanasia, and ends by saying it might be argued that confining COVID-negative residents with COVID-positive nursing home is tantamount to state-sanctioned euthanasia. He was appointed to the medical board by Simon Harris, but resigned in April, describing the management of the crisis as the biggest political blunder in the history of the state. Meanwhile, in Australia, a billionaire called Clive Palmer has bought 32 million doses of hydroxychloroquine, apologies, I can never pronounce that properly, for treating the Australians free of charge, with the Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt announcing that the drug will be made available to doctors to prescribe to patients of COVID-19 in hospitals if they so choose. He also donated $11 million towards testing. Korea and Jordan are using it. In France, 12 doctors signed a letter to Macron demanding the release of the drug urgently. Turkey is also using the drug. In April, Israel actually thanked the Indian government for sending 5 tons of medical supplies, including the drug. Russia has authorized patients in hospital to be issued with the drug, and yet there is no mention of it here. The failure to examine an alternative to Gates Foundation vaccine is nothing short of a moral and absolute financial scandal, which is keeping the country in an unnecessary lockdown. On a different story, Grant Torino had a piece on the Leiter Express arriving in Dublin in 2002. Now, I spotted that aircraft in Baldonnel, and it was a Boeing 737, and when I made inquiries with some people that I knew, I was told that the Clintons had actually arrived in town. And it's an interesting designed aircraft. It had 3 engines, and a crucial point of it was that it had an entrance underneath the stairs. Now this plane, the Boeing 727, was featured in a famous story where a plane of Northwest in November 1971, where a plane of Northwest Orient Airlines was hijacked by a man who booked a ticket in the name of D.B. Cooper, who said that he had a bomb in his briefcase and he demanded $200,000, now worth $1.25 million, and 4 parachutes. Upon landing, he released 36 passengers and was given the money and the parachutes, and he ordered the captain to take off and fly to Reno at an altitude of below 10,000 feet with the wheels extended, and not to fly above 200 miles an hour, and to keep the cabin unpressurized and keep the stairs underneath the tail, a unique feature of this type of aircraft, open. When the plane landed in Reno 2.5 hours later, to the waiting FBI agents and police, D.B. Cooper was gone, along with the money, never to be found or seen again, making him the top of the FBI's most wanted list and guaranteeing him legendary status. I have often wondered why the Epstein, with all his wealth, had chosen to fly such an old aircraft, which first flew in 1963 and with 1,832 being built until 1984, and being retired by most operators other than cargo in around the year 2000 due to rising fuel costs and operating costs, and was also used by the CIA because of its retractable tail stairs to drop agents and supplies. Who knows what else was thrown out the back of Epstein's aircraft. And reminds me of a story. One time I rang a friend of mine who was in his place of work. I had told him the story about D.B. Cooper, and when I asked to leave a message, his boss said to me, "Would you like to leave a message for him?" And I said, "Yes, I would." I said, "Would you tell him D.B. Cooper rang and that his parachute was ready?" So needless to say, when he came back and he told him that story, he burst out laughing, much to the annoyance of his boss. So he then had to explain who D.B. Cooper was. Now, while out for a walk last night, I came across a street party complete with ghetto blaster and about 50 people outside in a green area on deck chairs drinking to Dexy's Midnight Runners, Come On Eileen. I decided to say hello and walked over to one group of about 20 and started to clap loudly, and as they turned around I said to them, I applaud their community spirit. I spoke about the unnecessary lockdown for about 5 minutes, explained facts and figures, statistics, and suggested a few YouTubers to look at, including Computing Forever and Gran Torino, before walking away to the sound of Madness and the House of Fun. And now I have met a subscriber earlier on today, Graham, so I'd just like to say hello, Graham. It was very nice to meet you, and thanks for coming over to say hello. And earlier on the week I met George, who came over to say hello as well, so I'd like to say hello to them. But there are a couple of comments which are my own. Thanks for listening. Good night, good luck, and God bless.